What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Dreams to Reality podcast. And as you can already see, we are not in the studio at my office. We are out and about at the BBC Gloucestershire studios. With that said, we've got a very, very special guest on the Dreams to Reality podcast. We've got Steve Knibbs. How you doing, my friend?
Really good, Cam. Thanks. Welcome to where I live and work and spend most of my life at the moment.
You say that. It's funny, actually, because I put out on Twitter today but I was interviewing you, and you said it's going to be weird because this is the first time you're not interviewing people, somebody's actually interviewing you. Has that ever happened before?
I've done a few things like this. I've done a couple of radio podcasts before, and you get interviewed. Sometimes we give talks to groups and whatever, but it is unusual for people to ask me questions because usually I'm holding people to account, or as I've done with you, asking them questions.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit weird to be on the other side of it, but yeah, looking forward to it.
Amazing. So with that said, I do this with kind of every guest I have on the podcast. Start from the beginning. Where are you from? Obviously, we're in Gloucester now. Are you from Gloucester? And how did you get into working for the BBC? And so on and so forth, essentially.
Well, I'm a Gloucester boy born and bred.
Okay.
I'm from Tuffley originally. You're a Treadworth boy.
Yeah, not too far away.
Not too far away. And I'm a child of the early 70s. I won't tell you my age too much, but child of the early 70s. Oh, no! Harsh. Let's stop it now. Not quite. Not far off. So when I don't really know where my love of radio came from. My granddad, on my dad's side, he was a steam train driver, but he loved presenting concerts and putting on shows, and he was a bit of a performer. My granny on my mum's side played the piano, and you know there was a bit of performer there, and I've always loved that. But from a very young age, probably 7 or 8, I've always been really interested and fascinated by radio. I was brought up listening to Radio 1. And, one of my earliest memories is sitting in the bath on a school night on a Sunday, listening to the chart show.
Okay.
And I used to, much before your time, Cam, when we used to have cassette players, you'd stop the record, you stop the tape, so you could just record the records and play them back, all that sort of thing. The early mixtapes. And then me and my mates I've got a good friend at the time, Rich Ford, who's still about in Gloucester. We used to do radio shows in my bedroom, again, recording them on cassette tapes, and those cassette tapes still exist somewhere. And I just become pretty obsessed with radio. And you'll remember Seven Sound in Gloucester, the independent.
Is it not about anymore?
No, but it's called Heart now.
Okay.
So Seven Sound became
so
Heart.
Okay.
But when that started up, that was the first local radio station in Gloucester. And again, I became pretty obsessed with that as a school child, and would pop in occasionally and stuff. And then they started building this place. So we're in the BBC Gloucestershire building, as you said. They started building this in the late 80s when I was still at school. And just before they came on air, I rang them up and said, look, I'm really interested in radio. Can I come in and have a look around one day?
So how old was you then?
So I would have probably been about 16. I think this was sort of 88.
Wow, so to even think about it, because obviously I do a huge amount of work in schools, as we both know. So to be a 15, 16-year-old, to have the courage to make the call, or even before that, to go into Seven Sound, shows a lot about your hunger and really what you wanted to do from such a young age, I guess.
I was really nervous. I remember ringing up here and speaking to somebody and being really nervous. My parents had to push me to do it.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't.
Wow.
I was never really that confident, really, but they pushed me to do it, and I'm glad I did, because throughout my school life, when I always wanted to be a radio DJ, and I remember when in the first year at school, we all had to write down what we wanted to do, and people were writing politician, engineer, and I wrote radio DJ, and a lot of my friends took the mickey out of me in a nice way. So, radio DJ, you want to be on Radio 1, and we joke now, I'm the only one that actually did what we wrote in that time. They've all done other things and they're doing really well, but that was the one that I stuck with it. And I think in those days it was, if you wanted to do something that was a bit different, it may be the same now. We're not it wasn't in the X Factor era or the Voice era, where, everybody wants to be famous. And it wasn't about being famous. It was about just entertaining people. And I think in those days, the opportunities were few and far between. And I didn't really get as much encouragement from my teachers as I would have liked. I would have liked a bit more, because I really believed in it. And when the teacher says, that's a nice aspiration, but how about this,
But I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess back then, I wouldn't like to say it was more competitive, but you had less ways to kind of express yourself. Like today,
Oh,
I'm not on radio.
Yeah.
So what did? I created my own podcast.
I'd say if I had this kit when I was your age or younger, I would have been in absolute heaven. You know, we were recording in my bedroom radio shows, just playing it through a speaker and recording it on a cassette deck. And now, you know, the kit for professional broadcasts is in the hands of everybody, and that's a great thing. I mean, the podcast that you're doing, the radio podcast, the audio podcasts as well, are fantastic, and it is a very different landscape to where I was now, to where I was back then. And you're right, actually. Yeah, the opportunities were few and far between. I think if podcasts had existed then, I would have gone off and done my own
thing. Yeah.
So a lot of this industry, and many people will tell you this in broadcasting, is a lot of it is being in the right place at the right time, having a lucky break, and actually somebody just saying, yeah, okay, no, we'll give you a go. And that's something that stuck with me.
You called up.
Yep.
What did they say?
This was a long time ago, but they said, come on in and have a look around. And I came in for a day. I think I might have popped in after school or something.
Okay.
Before they went
into this building.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
okay.
The presenter at the time was a guy called Nick Herbert, and he did the weekend mid-morning shows. Or was it just the Sunday one? I think it might be just the Sunday one. No, it was Saturday and Sunday mornings he did. And I met him and just had a look around, you know, and they welcomed me in. This was 2 weeks before the station went on air.
Okay.
And then a couple of days later, he rang me up at home and said, you're not free on Sunday, are you? And I said, yeah. He said, would you come in? We're doing some dummy runs, and we want someone to sit across the phones for us.
Oh, amazing.
So I went, yeah, I'll be there.
Of course.
And it was in this studio, actually. We're in Studio 1 now. It was called Cubicle B there, and I was sat just out there where the phoning was.
We'll put that on the vlog, guys, so you can see behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. And that went really well. And they said, well, do you want to come back next week? And just from then, so I got a volunteer. I was volunteering.
Amazing.
And I was like the pig in the proverbial, you can imagine. And they just gave me a chance. And so every Sunday morning for many months, I was coming in and answering the phones for Nick. And then I was teaching myself how to do everything, how to use the studios, how to operate the tape machines, how to interview people. In those days, it was all editing with razor blades and sticky tape, and you stick the tape together.
Yeah. Still do that now sometimes.
Absolutely. So, you know, I was getting very useful. And in the end, I was being asked to then help what we call driving some programs, so getting in the studios and driving live shows on air. And it just went from there. Then when I went away to university, I would come back.
Where did you go?
So I went to Sheffield.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I'd never been north of Birmingham in my entire life.
Wow.
So that was a great experience.
So did you do any radio stuff there? What did you study?
So I did a degree in, it came out, it was a cultural studies degree, but as part of that, it was communications, English and media.
Okay, I got you.
And funny enough, we had a radio module and a TV module on it. And the people who were teaching me the radio module were volunteers from Radio Sheffield, and I knew more about them, more about radio than they did at the time. And then we actually got on really well. So we didn't really learn. I personally didn't learn much about radio, but it was a great experience because we got.
I bet you gave quite a bit though as well.
Yeah, we did. It was. I really look forward to it, and I don't say that in an egotistical way. It was just a great opportunity to meet other people that were in a similar position to me. But I would always come home in the summer holidays and come here and work.
And they kept their doors open for you.
And in those, and you know, eventually they paid me, you know, so I was volunteering before I went to university. Then they were paying me. I got paid, I think my first paycheck was £5 a day. And actually, you know, funnily enough, I regret cashing it because I wish it was a big BBC check. I wish I'd kept it now. So
I got my first check, my speaking check on my table in my office.
Have you?
But I still cashed it. I needed the money at the time. But I photocopied it and put it on then. Yeah,
but it means a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that because you know you're getting
somebody's
paid
paying you to do your something you really want to do. Somebody's just paid you to do it.
Yeah.
And just the second one came months after, but it's just having that first one. It's like a stepping stone, isn't it? Like, actually, maybe I can really make a living from doing what I'm doing.
I think you always get a sense as well that one day we're all going to get found out, and that we're still getting paid to do this. But actually, you're dead right. We're getting paid to do it because we can do the job. And if you're passionate about something and you show that you enjoy it, and you're still driven after all. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still driven to do it. And the day you stop feeling driven, the day you don't want to come in and do it, it's the day you should stop and have a word with yourself. Really,
it's interesting. You just said you kind of feel like you're going to get found out, and it's been many times me and Gadget Lines been driving around, especially in our earlier days when we're struggling more financially, and we're thinking, God, what are we doing? We could just go and get a job. But I think, this is our job.
Yeah.
How amazing is this? Where have we played the system? Now we're driving around doing exactly what we want to do. Obviously, it's not easy because you've got the stress and there's no consistency sometimes to the money you get, but it's worth it because I think, wow, I'm actually doing what I want to do, and it goes a lot deeper than money. It goes back to the passion you had when you were 6, 7, 8 years old, and you wanted to be a radio presenter, TV, whatever you wanted to do, and you kept that dream throughout your whole childhood, and you actually made it happen.
And I think that's the difference, isn't it? And I feel really lucky to have got the opportunity to then become a radio presenter and then go into TV. I mean, we can come on to this. This isn't doing TV isn't what I thought I'd do. I didn't really have any interest in it, but I feel genuinely grateful that I've been given the opportunity, because there are lots of people that want to be doing what I'm doing, what my colleagues are doing, a lot of people that want to work in the media. And, I think we're fortunate to have that opportunity, and we've got to show it some respect. I think that we hold on to that, and we don't play the game, and we do it properly.
So I got many questions, but I don't want to forget this one. Just quickly, to any young people out there, if they want to get into any type of media, not BBC in general, just places, or even get into a company, or does that make sense? They got a dream and they want to start getting experience, whether they get paid for it or not doesn't matter. They want to start getting experience. What would you say? Because at the age of 15, 16, you picked up the phone. How many people are really willing to pick up the phone now? Send an email, send a handwritten letter. What advice would you potentially give to younger people trying to make their dream essentially happen?
I think it's very easy for us to spot. We get approached a fair bit by people who drop us emails, or we get tweeted or contacted. It's really easy to spot the ones that are just fishing, that don't really have a passion for what they're asking to do.
Okay.
And I think if you've got an aspiration to do something like I did and like you did, if you've got 100% belief and that's really what you want to do, research your subject, find the right contacts, talk to people with passion. Don't just send a standard letter to everybody. Just keep knocking on the door. Get a little bit annoying if you like. But if you're genuinely passionate about something,
that's a good bit of
keep knocking on the door, because one day somebody will open it. And what I always say to people is, once you show that passion and you show that understanding for the subject, and you have knowledge of it. I mean, I've had people write to me saying, I'd love to work at ITV Points West. Now, obviously, we work for BBC Points West. ITV is a different programme. And it's just that little thing makes me think, right, you haven't done your work. You don't really know what you're talking about.
Well, that's fascinating, actually.
It's the little thing. So
because they probably sent the same email
to BBC West Country or something, So, so for me, and I always try to give back and help people. We used to, in the old days, I must stop saying that. But,
no, it is
previously,
true.
on work experience, we could take, many people. Now we're more selective, and I think it's really important that the ones we take actually have a passion for the job.
That's true.
Because if you don't, then we're wasting our time and we're wasting their time.
Somebody else is missing out on that opportunity.
Yeah.
Somebody else who really wants to do it is missing out on that opportunity.
And I will always talk to some. I will always give my advice to anybody, because somebody gave me an opportunity one day. So anybody that wants to work in this business, I'm more than happy to talk to them, as long as they're serious about it. And then it might put them off. It might give them a reality check, or it might just give them a step on the ladder, or some more drive to do it.
I would even say you gave me advice, really, and it goes a lot deeper. It was where we first met, was at Cheltenham Racecourse, not gambling. We was actually, Steve was presenting as well as I was. I was doing like a 10-15 minute kind of talk, and we sat next to each other. And it's funny that, because I didn't really know who you was. I've heard your name before, and I remember I walked in the building with Gadget Line. We're like, where's that BBC guy? Where is he? And we're like, here. Oh, he sat there. So I remember bumped this person out of the way. I'm like, oh, I'm sat here. Hey, Steve, how you doing? I guess we're sat next to each other today. I'm the other speaker. And then you had to sit there with me for an hour eating food. And I thought, this is my chance. I'd be like, oh, yeah. So then obviously, I don't know if you can remember too much, but I just started asking as many questions as I possibly can. And what actually was interesting is when you first think of somebody who works at the BBC or got a job on TV, you think they're going to be stuck up somewhere. You think they're going to have a big ego, but for how many questions I asked you, you asked me exactly the same. And it wasn't like, you can tell when somebody's not interested. You was actually interested. And you was actually really asking great questions and making me think. And I would never forget that, for kind of how you made me feel in that moment. And then really eventually later, obviously, I probably bugged you enough out. I done stuff for the radio event, done stuff in Bristol, and done stuff with you. And it was probably just because you seen that I was hungry, you seen that I was consistent, and it wasn't just somebody who just wants to be a motivational speaker or life coach. Is somebody who's actually doing it on a daily basis, I guess. But I will never forget that characteristic you showed on that day, and that's why I feel like we got quite a good relationship now, or we just moving forward, I think.
Well, I'm naturally curious, so whenever I go to things like that, and you meet new people, I do love meeting new people. It's one of the great things in this job, that every day is something different. And so that natural curiosity is obviously a good thing to be a journalist. And I remember meeting you on that time. I'd never met you before, didn't know what you did. And then you stood up and spoke. And I was blown away by what you did. And that then led me on to, right, I want to do a story with you now, because...
Especially from Treadworth and doing what we spoke
so the whole
about
backstory.
before.
And it took us a while to get there because you were busy, I was busy.
Yeah.
But I think it worked really well in the end. And I think most people have got a good story to tell, whether they think they've got it or not. I mean, yours was pretty exceptional, and more power to you for what you're doing, and I think you're doing a great job. So that day it was a no-brainer, because you were confident enough to come down and you weren't shy, and you were sat on that table probably wearing what you're wearing now.
I am, basically.
We were all in suits.
That was it, wasn't it? Because me and Dave, we walked in. And I was wearing not tracksuit bottoms, but I was wearing like camo bottoms with trainers. And we walked in and we was like, oh shit. I think I didn't read the memo to the email.
I don't think I was wearing a tuxedo, but it was
a smart event at Cheltenham Racecourse, and we thought, oh, we're gonna stand out more if anything. And it was a great occasion. But then let's go back, because there's so much I want to cover. You done your volunteering, you started to get paid for the BBC. When did you first have your own radio show, and how long did you do it for?
So this is after I graduated, and I came back and started working here in late 92. When were you born?
91, just saying.
Okay, at least you were alive. Do you not tune in? So I came back in late 92, and I was working for the mid-morning show, and then the afternoon show job came up. Anna King, who was the presenter, who now does the mid-morning show here, she was going on away on a bit of an attachment. And I thought I'd put my hat in the ring. I was 23 at the time, 22, 23.
Wow.
So I put my hat in the ring and I got the job. So I got my first, funny enough, presented in this studio. So this was where it started for me. And I did that.
Bit dusty.
Yeah,
but
well, this is all digital stuff now. In those days, it was big faders, and we were playing vinyl, and we were using CDs, and now it's all digital.
That's incredible.
So, and I was really lucky, and I did that for about a year.
It was lucky, but I always say the harder you work, the luckier you become. And you made that phone call. You had the heart. You done what you did in Sheffield, and you kept coming back. Something kept bringing you back. So even though you might have been lucky because somebody went on leave and it all might have fallen for you, you still put yourself in that position. You still worked hard. How many people in your day and age probably wanted to go on radio, but it was just a nice idea, but you actually made it happen? I don't want to float your own boat, but what I'm trying to distinguish is there's people who, it's that cliche Michael Jordan quote, some want it to happen, some wish it happened, some make it happen, and you made it happen.
I think you're right, but also I do, from what I was saying earlier, I think there is that element in our business as well about being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, okay.
And I did make it happen because I was annoying and I was around all the time and people knew who I was. But I was never cocky, and that's the difference. There's a fine line between being, happily irritating and being annoying and being cocky and being too cocky. So, but you would talk to a lot of people in the business, even famous people like Zoe Ball and Sarah Cox on Radio 2 and all these, they will say that they had a very similar path, I think, because they got their breaks in local radio maybe, or they were in the right place at the right time, or somebody fell sick and you happened to be in the building at the same time. That does happen a lot, but you're right, you do have to be in there. You have to be in that building. You have to be there at the first time.
Let's talk quickly about what you just said. There's a fine line between cocky and, I guess, confident. I don't know whether you would agree, but I think cockiness, in many ways, not always, it comes from insecurity. So from what I do, I guess people think it's very egotistical. I go and talk about myself, but I don't see it as that way. I see I'm the vehicle to help people. That's the way I see it. But there was a time when I think I was cocky. And when I was cocky, that was when I was the most insecure I've ever been. That's why I'm doing this podcast now, because before I pretend I wasn't fascinated by anyone. I was the man. I wanted to rip off everybody's head in the industry. No competition. But it was only because I was insecure, I think. So would you say in your industry, TV, radio, whatever, do you think majority of people who make it to where you got to, it's not like cockiness, it's more being competent, and it's just that confidence knowing that you can do what you can?
Yeah, I think confidence is the big thing, and believing in yourself. And you're right. I mean, in this industry, it's no surprise that there are lots of egos about as well. I don't think I have one. I'm not that sort of person. Steady. Should we finish this now? I genuinely don't. And if I do get caught having an ego, then it's a bad day for me. I'm not that sort of person. There are people that do, and that comes across as cockiness and confidence at the same time, which is a bit of a difficult thing to define. But I think if you're sure of yourself, and particularly in this business, you've got to like the sound of your voice if you're on the radio. You've got to be comfortable being on TV as well, and how you look and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think you've got to be confident as a rounded individual, not just who you are and how you speak and how you are, but how you look as well, and not really care what other people think. You need a bit of a thick skin as well, because you are exposed to the public, especially through social media now.
Yes, true.
So I've gone a bit off the point, but
no,
cockiness is difficult to define. You're right. I think it's about knowing your place, really. Perhaps that's a better way of describing it. So, if you're coming in as somebody who wants to work in the industry or in anything, and you try and be a bit bolshy and a bit know-it-all, it's about knowing your level, really, so that you earn respect. Is that what it's about? It's earning. It's having the confidence to be a really nice person and earn other people's respect.
Yeah, and I think those lessons there, guys, just to go off point a little bit, it doesn't matter whether you're working for BBC, radio, TV, all those lessons you share and apply for life. In a company, being apprenticed, whatever it is, it applies for absolutely everything. Quick question, because I don't want to miss it again. Radio, TV, what when you wake up and you have a bad day? What happens? You wake up, you have a bad day, you can't be bothered. I even get it, I don't want to talk to anyone, but it's your job. What?
Well, I know it. I was only talking about this to a colleague last night, actually, that if you wake up and you've had a bad day, or you've woken up and you've kicked the cat by mistake, or you've had an argument with somebody in the office, as soon as you open that fader, so look, as soon as that red light goes on, you got to be the same person you were yesterday, and the same person that you will be tomorrow, because there are listeners out there and viewers who are relying on you to be that constant, to be that same person. And actually, if I'd had a bad day, I used to find the radio show would be actually a great relief and a bit of a release. True. But it doesn't make it easy, because you've got to pick yourself up, and sometimes if you're feeling a bit down, or you're anxious about something, or something's going on in your personal life, that sometimes is difficult to distract yourself from. But yeah, as soon as that red light goes on, you've still got to be Steve Knibbs or Cam Parker or Joe Wiley or whoever, the same as you were yesterday. Okay,
cool. So how long was you doing radio for, and when did you start to go over to TV, and how did that transition happen? Because I don't know if you said it on this podcast or was it before, you said TV wasn't really a goal for you, it wasn't something you was willing to do.
So I did the afternoon show for a bit, and then I came off air. New manager came in, thought I was a bit too young, because we were broadcasting to older people, sort of 55 plus, and he was right. So I came off for a year, did some production, came back on air, did a drive time show for about 18 months, which involved a little bit of news, which was new to me as well. And then it would have been, I think, 97-ish, the boss here said to me, you need to get some more news experience. And I said, look, I've got no interest in news. Radio's my thing, and that's what I want to stick with. And I didn't really have a career plan. I'd applied for jobs at 5 Live and Radio 1, off-air jobs, actually, production jobs, which I hadn't got. So I came back and he said, look, you need to get some news experience. If you don't get some news experience, you'll be left behind, because that was the way the BBC, particularly at local level, was going.
Do you agree with that statement now?
Yeah, absolutely, because it changed my career.
Wow.
So he said, and I at that point I was the weekend producer, so I was in charge of all the weekend output here. So I just had like a 2-hour show on a Sunday morning. So I was keeping my hand in presenting, but I was still had some other stuff to do. So I went to Wiltshire Sound, as it was then in Swindon, on an attachment as a newsreader.
Okay.
So I became their breakfast newsreader because I was good at reading out loud. Did all the news courses. I got completely bitten by the news bug and fell in love with it. Especially if there was a breaking story, just the adrenaline would start running and pumping. And then a couple of years later, we were all given some TV trainings because it was all about multi-skilling. And I suddenly fell in love with the TV bug, and I thought, this is great as well. And I got an attachment. This is a very long story short. Got an attachment down to Bristol to work at Points West, and worked for them for about 6 or 8 months in the newsroom. Then I got an attachment as a reporter for them. And then I became the Wiltshire reporter for 6 years because I went back to Swindon. And then for the last 13 and a bit years, I've been the Gloucestershire reporter. So I came back home and back to the building. So I'm based here. A lot of people think I'm based in Bristol, but I work out of here with my amazing cameraman, Mark Leach.
Is that the same one we met?
Yeah. So we've worked
guy.
together for all the time, and he's brilliant. We work as a really good team now. So we're based here. So
Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to Dave on the cameras there. Well, we'll see what it looks like later. But he's
good at making me look tall. Anyway, that's the main thing.
Well, you need a good cameraman to make you look good. So that's a really long story.
For when we done the BBC Points West, right? And you're interviewing me. I'm stood there, and yeah, your legs are spread so wide to make me look basically to make us look at the same height, which is when you look back on the pictures, it's hilarious.
It's the TV trick. It's the TV trick.
I mean, when you first heard, I was like, what's he doing? BBC,
You're giving all my secrets away now, Cam. Cut that
bit. Okay, perfect. So I feel like we got through your story, because the whole point of this is not just your story, but around mindset, motivation a little bit, and we touched on it. Another question, right? How do you stay consistent for as long as you have? How long have you been working for BBC for?
I've been staff for 25 years.
Because it comes a lot deeper, and obviously you've already proven that when just collecting a paycheck, right? So there is a massive element of consistency you have to show, especially when you're going out to the public, especially when you are talking to people, you're on TV. You have to be consistent. Similar to what we just said a minute ago, you have to show up every day regardless of how you feel. Is that hard, keeping that level of consistency, or is it easy when you love something, or what?
You just nailed it. I think that's it. For me, I still absolutely love this job. And, I'm born and bred in Gloucestershire. I work as the Gloucestershire reporter. Every day is different. I love living here. I love working here. I've got great colleagues. And the day I stop feeling like that is the day I'll do another job. But at the moment, I still love it. And I think that gives you motivation. If you still want to come to work every day, and okay, what my job is slightly different. There's not many people doing what I do really across the country. So I'm very fortunate for that. But if I didn't want to come in after waking up every day, I wouldn't do it. I've always said to myself, in my spare time, I used to play in bands and other stuff. And one of the bands I was in, we always said to each other, the day we stop wanting to go and do the gig is the day we split up. And that happened, and we split up. And it wasn't acrimonious. It was because we just stopped enjoying it. And that's life. You move on. I think if you don't enjoy something, it can grind you down. And you should, my advice would always be, try and find something else to keep you happy. Life's too short to, that's not always easy.
It's not always easy.
That's not always easy. And a lot of us, we've all gone through dips with our job. I have. But you have to, like I say, I'm lucky that I still love the job, and I'm still given the opportunity to do it.
But everyone would find so many excuses not to change their job. or I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, and even though all of this stuff is completely is true, as you said, you still got one life. So when it annoys me is when I ask, have you gone out and applied for different jobs? The answer is no. So how do you know? You could
Well, you make your own luck, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
If stuff isn't going to come to you. I learned that very early on. Stuff isn't going to come to you as easily as you think it is.
No.
And
things take a lot longer than they normally do as well.
They do. And also, I think I was the same. And when I speak to some of the younger people that work here in their 20s, and you don't want to sound like their dad or anything, but I can see I can see myself in them. And in my early 20s, I wanted a massive career, and I wanted to go straight to the top of the ladder straight away. And then I learned very quickly that doesn't happen. Okay, I got the presenting job here, but and that came quite quickly. But there was other stuff I wanted to achieve, and I think if you're 23, 24, you've got your life ahead of you. And there is plenty of time for opportunity. So don't rush in and don't get disappointed if you haven't quite achieved at the age of 23 what you want your life to be, because hopefully you're going to live a very long and happy life. There's plenty of time. Take your foot off the gas a bit.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but right now when I look at you, I see that you seem genuinely happy and really enjoy your job. But then it seemed like you also had bigger dreams when you was younger.
Yeah.
You're here now. Did you ever want to go on the bigger platforms? If so, what point did you say, actually, I'm really happy now. That's not what I want anymore. So let's be honest, goalposts change.
Yeah, they do.
Goals and dreams change, and there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion, as long as you're happy. So did that happen to you? And what happens when you get a young 20-year-old come in and I want to go and do this, I want to go and do that? Do you say it's possible, it's not possible, or what's your advice?
So to answer both those questions, yeah, I always wanted to work in radio, and that was my passion. I had no interest in news and TV, and look at what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I applied, like I said earlier, I applied for those jobs at Radio 1 and at 5 Live. I really wanted to go to London. I wanted to do the London thing. I think if you're in the media and you're young and you haven't got too many ties, to go to London or Salford, where the big media city is now, there's nothing like it.
Salford, where's?
So Salford's in Manchester. So that's where a BBC Breakfast is based, and BBC Sport and Six Music.
Wow,
so they're all based up there now. So I think that's the place to be if you're young and you want to work in the media. And I wanted that, and that wasn't happening for me. And then I got the job in TV, and I suddenly realised actually it's okay not to go to London. It is okay to stay in Gloucestershire.
That's true.
Even though my dream was to do the London thing. So it wasn't that I had to have a word with myself and go, London's not going to happen now. You're going to be disappointed. I actually went, it's okay not to go to London. It's okay not to get those jobs. And actually, may sound a bit wishy-washy, it was obviously meant to be, because if I'd gone to London, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
No, it's true.
So again, I think I've been very fortunate. Sometimes your path is already dug out for you. So I think for me, those dreams of going to London didn't happen. That's the way it was. But to answer your second question, if you've got a young person coming here saying, this is what I want to do, you've just got to go for it, because you might get it. And that's, again, what we were saying earlier. If you've got that aspiration, if you want to do something really and you're really passionate about it, you've got to give yourself every opportunity. I remember a little story very quickly. I remember doing a talk at a school in the Forest of Dean. It's probably about 10 years ago now. And we were talking to some sixth formers. They might have been a bit younger, actually. And there was a lad there. And if he's watching this, I hope you've achieved this. But apparently he wanted to be an astronaut.
Okay.
And to be an astronaut and come from the middle of the Forest of Dean wasn't something that many people had wanted to achieve. And he got ribbed for it. And I think he had the mickey taken out of him. And I said to him, if you want to be an astronaut, you go for it, because that's aspiration, that's ambition. And I really hope he has. I don't know what happened to him, but it's about that not giving up, whether you want to be an astronaut or you want to work in insurance or you want to be on the radio or whether you want to be a policeman or whatever. If you've got a real desire for something, why should you stop?
But even if he didn't become an astronaut, just having a dream is going to guide him in some type of way. All right, it might not become an astronaut, but he could have become a scientist. Or he could have done something different. It might not have been an astronaut, but just having something to go after every day, it could have landed him something else.
And I think that's the thing, is I think we're often criticised in society if you stand out, if you choose a different path to what your peers are choosing. And you'll know this from the talks that you do to the young people in the schools as well.
Incredible talks I do.
Yeah, your hot talks. But you know, so often there's a pressure on young people, isn't there, to conform and to be the same and to look the same. And the ones that stand out, that want something different, they're often the ones that are given the hardest time because they've chosen a different path. And I think that's a real shame. And I would always say to them, like I did to this lad, ignore the haters, just go for it. So if you're watching and you became an astronaut, please tell me. I can't remember his name, but you know what I'm saying.
Of course,
so that's
yeah.
the sort of thing.
It's hard for me, Steve, to go into schools in different areas around the UK and see that the kids don't have aspirations. Like, legitimately, they're not just saying, I don't know what I want to do. You can see there is no hope. I guess you see it from time to time. We see it on TV, radio, everything. What advice would you potentially give to somebody like that? Or my advice potentially, if a lot of these times when they feel like there is a glass ceiling over them, a lot of them don't actually come out of their own area. And it's not to say that area is particularly bad, but sometimes we need to expand our minds, because then it doesn't really go back to its original dimension in a way. So once you see things, you meet different people. And that happened to me being in Gloucester. I was very, very close-minded, but when I started going out, meeting different people, everything started to change. My perspective started to change. When, as we know, some of my friends I was raised with, they didn't have the same kind of insight what I had, and we took completely different paths. What would you say? Would it be something similar, or
I don't know, that's a hard one, isn't it? I mean, where does inspiration and aspiration come from? It comes from the people that you mix with.
That's true.
Your families. Sometimes it just comes out of nowhere. I think I don't really know where my radio broadcasting thing came from.
The bath, apparently.
Probably just in the middle of the night. Sunday night baths it was. But that's a really hard one. I think as a young person, I knew what I wanted to do, and I think I'm really lucky.
Okay.
I don't think many people.
No, they don't.
It's not as many people do.
And it doesn't matter if that changes, by the way.
It doesn't matter. Absolutely, you will find something. And actually, you know, as you get older, that aspiration, hopefully that inspiration will come. But you can't. I don't think you can force it.
No.
I think, but it does come from people around you, and hopefully, if you're at school, it's your teachers. You know, it's spotting that, isn't it, and saying, you know, let's try and guide you in. I don't know what careers advice is like these days. So it's a difficult one.
Even at school, workplaces, it doesn't matter where you are. Even starting a business, being around people who are in similar situations to you, or somebody who's in a better position than you, being around that person is ultimately, hopefully, going to inspire you to do something better. So I feel like there's many key takeaways from today's interview. And I know we haven't got long because I know the next show's in here. But I ask every guest this: if you could sit down with 3 people, dead or alive, right, Steve? Famous, whatever. What 3 people would it be, and why? So 3 people, dead or alive. Once again, I know you've probably only got 2 because you've achieved it now with Cameron Parker. Sit down.
So
you've
just
done
2
that
left.
one.
Okay. Oh, this is going to be
joke's
really,
getting old now.
Really difficult. Really difficult. Okay. I want to sit down with my Irish granddad.
Oh, okay.
Who I was really close to. He sadly died 6 months before we got married. Me and Jane got married so we got married in 2000.
Okay.
He was a big inspiration to me. So I'd just like to sit down with him and just to talk things through. You know, that would be really nice.
What do you mean talk things through?
Well, so he died 20 years ago, he died when I was 27. And
same age as me now.
So, you know, a lot's changed since I got married. You know, the job's changed. I've had a daughter. So it'd just be good. I'd like to see him again, you know. That'd be really nice. Cool. Unless you're asking for famous people. He was famous to me.
That's a good perspective.
That would be for me. Although I should also then encounter all of my
relatives. You can't just pick
So that's slightly unfair on my other relatives. So I also love to have passed
great
on.
auntie.
Yeah, I know. So so I do apologise. But anyway, so that would be one. There's one of my passions is magic.
Okay.
So yeah, I do magic as well as a hobby, and there was a great magician called John Neville Maskelyne from Cheltenham who changed the course of magic. I haven't got time to go into his story now, but he invented levitation. So I'd like to talk to him.
Is he still alive?
No, he's dead. He's Victorian. Yeah, no, he's dead. Yeah. Otherwise, I would talk to him. And who else would I like to speak to? Oh God, that's really difficult, Cam, isn't it?
Third and final.
That's really difficult. Okay, it's an obvious one. Probably John Lennon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to him.
Okay, wow. So, guys, just to wrap this whole interview up, we was kind of rushed. Hopefully you can maybe come to our studio, and I feel like there's so much more we can touch on. But I feel like there's so many key takeaways from today's podcast, especially kind of around creating luck, even just picking up the phone call, going after it. We talked a lot about confidence and just really kind of preparing yourself for what is to come. I think it's been an incredible chat. With that said, I know you're quite heavy on Twitter. Where can people find you on Twitter, Steve?
So on Twitter, I am at Knibbsy, so which is Knibbs, Knibbsey. I love Twitter. And
Twitter's your thing, definitely.
That is my thing, yeah. And I'm on Facebook. There's a Steve Knibbs BBC on Facebook. I don't tend to use that as much because I haven't got the Twitter linking up to the Facebook. But, yeah.
Check him out, guys. Become annoying.
Ask me any questions.
Yeah, because
knock on the door.
I even think I was tweeting him, and I think follow me. I said follow me back. Then I sent you messages before. So I think I've mastered the art of being annoying. But I think that's
in a good way, though.
In a good way.
Yeah, be annoying in a good way. Don't be annoyingly cocky.
But only if you want, like you really want something. Sometimes it's down to us to really make it happen. With that said, thank you again, Steve. I do appreciate your time. Absolutely. I know you're a very, very busy man. Make sure you like, comment and share this video. Also listen to the audio form on iTunes. Hit that big red button and subscribe. We got so much more podcasts coming your way. Thanks, guys.
He's the man.
How was that?